Hello, students. Tim here from Lessons on the Web, your YouTube teacher here on YouTube. That made a lot of sense, right? And today, what we're doing is I'm kind of getting a feel for what you are struggling with when you practice piano. Now, why are we doing this? Well, it will help us come together as a community and help for you to let me know what things you would like to see lessons on, what things you need a little bit more explanation for, or just some tips on how to get around problems that you're having. So I'll start it off. I have probably the most trouble practicing with the metronome on a bunch of different fronts. One of the first things is that I forget to practice with the metronome sometimes. I just forget. I'll get through my practice routine and then I'll be like, no, I forgot. But not as all lost because I do eventually remember, but I also have trouble with it on another front, really, which is keeping in time with the metronome. So to keep in time with the metronome really well, you have to know the piece pretty well first, and then you want to try it with the metronome. So that's one thing I struggle with. What is one thing everybody else here struggles with? I know Rich had said that he struggles with 16th notes, so that's good to know. Maybe we'll have a lesson in the future on 16th notes. But everybody else that's in the chat, what do you feel is the things you struggle with when you are playing piano? Rich has a really good one here. I struggle with staccatos on one clef and legatos at the same time. So that would make a really good lesson, perhaps in maybe a dexterity kind of lesson where you are in coordination, where you're trying to do with one thing with one hand and one thing with the other. So we could take it to exactly what you said with staccatos and legatos, but we could even do different things as well, like different rhythms. Maybe dotted eighth notes or dotted quarter notes and eighth notes in one hand and just quarter notes in the other. Start out simple and then build on that. So that's a really great idea for a lesson, which is like how to develop your hand coordination and dexterity when both hands aren't playing the exact same thing. What about everybody else? It looks like there's a nice healthy 8 people here right now. What are some of the things that you struggle with playing piano? I'll let you answer, give you a couple minutes to answer. If not, then I'll share another one that I struggle with as well. Remember that this is really important, really, to help me shape the channel in a way that's the best for the community and the best for you, so you get the most you can out of the channel. So try not to be shy, but it's okay if you want to sit back, relax, and enjoy the lesson. If you're watching the recording of this, leave it in the comments. The main question of today is, what do you struggle with when you are practicing piano? What would you like lessons on? What do you feel like needs more explanation? That would really help you out. So just let me know in the comments, and I'll get back to you, real soon. I try to get back to as many people as I can. And like I said, it really helps me shape the direction that we're going to go in the future in terms of what lessons are going to come out. Rich has an interesting question. Tim, do you still have the same passion for piano that you had when you started, even after all these years? Yes, most of the time. Now, there are some times where I feel a little overwhelmed with how much I have going on. That has to do with piano and teaching piano and everything. But that doesn't mean that I don't have the same passion. If anything, I have more passion, because passion is really what helps get me through all the amazing things that I have to do in a week. For the YouTube channel, for my local piano teaching students, for my online academy, all that stuff. So the answer is yes. If anything, I have even more passion for it because I've seen the fruits of my labor and seen how you grow, how the people in the YouTube channel grow. They leave me nice comments or send me recordings and a lot of other nice things. So it's really great to see how many people I've been able to help with that, and that really helps keep me going. So the answer is yes. Now, I could probably practice a little more, I could tell you that. Sometimes I do practice a good amount, maybe an hour or more a day. Either way, I probably do practice that much anyway because I have to play for my students, so I probably end up collectively practicing for that amount of time. But I do every now and again like to practice things that, I want to work on, but haven't been able to do that as much recently. I could do a little bit better on that for sure. Hold on a second, Rich. That's pretty good. Okay. Okay, so Rich asked, do I write all the articles on lessons on the web? They're really interesting. Robin will be really glad you said that for certain reasons. So I do not write the articles on the website. I do look them over and make sure that they fit in with what the direction of the website is, making sure that the information is correct, even though she does an amazing job. She's a music teacher herself, so she knows what she's talking about. I have a lot of trust in her, but I do look things over, mainly so I know what's going on is the main reason for that. But thank you for saying that, Rich. I'm really glad you think so. I really think the articles she writes, I've written a few of the articles early on, but the articles she writes kind of gives a different perspective on the things we talk about in the lessons. So that's really one of the reasons I have her write the articles, is she just has a different kind of view than I do in a really good way on these topics. So it's just not me explaining things the same way, just in written form. I wanted something a bit different, and that's what I get, and that's what we get with the articles. They are really interesting indeed. Okay, IDP Lake Monroe says playing different rhythms with both hands. So that's noted. So we've had basically two people now say something similar. I mean, Rich's was different. Rich's was staccato against legato. Staccato up here, legato down here. Just like that. So that's an example of that. And then playing different rhythms with both hands. So maybe quarter notes and triplets or something like that. And 16th notes. So that's something that gives me a great idea on to make a lesson about, which is really developing. I could make 2 lessons about it. Depends if I have enough material to make both things, but I could combine them into the same lesson, which is developing independence between our hands, developing coordination between our hands, and all of those things. So that's a great, thank you for that feedback, because that kind of reinforces what I should make a future lesson on. What about anybody else? Does anybody else have a suggestion of a video they'd like to see, or something they struggle with when they practice? Because like I said, it really helps me shape the videos, so you have like an input on the future videos that are going to come out. So I know that these videos are videos that you want and that you need. So if you are watching the recording of this, leave it please in the comments. I would love to hear your suggestions or your input on what you struggle with when you practice. I'll do another one. So I think another big thing that we run into when we practice that I have trouble with is setting the time aside to practice. Like I mentioned, I do so much teaching and everything that I don't have as much time to practice on my own. So I think one of the things that I should make a lesson about that would help everybody is how to form I did one on good practice habits in terms of what you should do when you practice, but how to schedule your practice, how to kind of come up with a plan so that you're more successful following through on practicing over the long term. I think that would make a really good lesson as well. IDP Lake Monroe also says, and playing by ear. Yes, I can definitely hear you on that suggestion. I do have a course over on my website, lessonsontheweb.com, about ear training, but I should make a couple of introductory videos for us, beginning piano players for the channel. So I could certainly make a couple of lessons on that. That's a good suggestion. I like that. What about anybody else? I think we'll go on for a little bit. I'll take a couple more suggestions. I'll give a little bit of feedback. Yes, please. Yeah, I will. I'll make a couple of ear training videos then. But we'll continue here for a few more minutes. I'll share with you. You'll share with me. And then we'll kind of talk about, where the live streams are headed, what you can expect out of the future live streams, because I am currently coming up with the topics for the next bunch of live streams. Okay, anybody else? Anybody else here who is struggling with anything? Rich says, what should I do when when sight reading a song? Should I play the song once or twice and move on? Or should I practice until I master the song? When sight reading, the whole goal of sight reading, honestly, is to read it once. I mean, after that, it's not really sight reading. However, I would reread it over maybe twice. Like, play it once and then play it twice more, even though that technically at that point it's not really sight reading. The reason I suggest you do that, even though it doesn't fit in the strict definition of sight reading, is that you want to pick out your mistakes. I think that's the valuable thing that comes from playing it twice more, is that, like I said, it's technically not sight reading, but you're still looking at it and saying, oh, you know what, I missed that the first time. So your brain makes that connection in there. So the answer to that question would be, play it once for sight reading, because you can't play it more than once for sight reading, because once you play it once, it's done. And then play it twice more, just to kind of iron out the mistakes. But the most important thing about sight reading is sight reading every single day. That is the key to getting good at sight reading. Everybody's asked me about that. How do I get good at sight reading? How do I get good at sight reading fast? The answer to any of those questions is do it every day. If you want to get good at sight reading fast, sight read a lot every day, and you'll get a lot better. All right, anybody else? I think I'll share one more, and then I think we'll take another question or two, and then we'll wrap it up. That means I should make a lesson, shouldn't I, on perhaps where to find sight reading, where to find material to sight read. I think that's a good one. So yeah, I will do a lesson on where to find material to sight read. If anybody is just joining us, what we're doing today is we're sharing what we have trouble with or what we'd like to see lessons on, so that, we can, together as a community, really kind of craft the lessons moving forward to really be the best lessons for the audience, not the audience really, but us as students, so that we can get the most out of them possible. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people here actually. Well, it said 8 or 9 the other minute ago, and now it's only 7, but that's okay. If you don't want to share, that's all right. But remember, it would really help. But the main thing is like, if you're watching this later and you come up with something, it's not a problem. You can go back to the recording of the video and type it in and say, I would like to see this, or I struggle with that. So if you're watching the recording of this, leave it in the comments. I would love to hear, once again, what you're struggling with and what kind of content and videos you'd like to see. Okay, that's all right. I will share maybe one more thing I struggle with or struggle with at the beginning. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so one of the things I struggled with, I remember back a long time ago. I may have been only in like first or second grade, but you may be an adult learning piano and you may run into this as well. So you learn your right hand, right, your treble clef, then you learn your bass clef, but you go back to playing treble clef and then you realize you don't know how to read bass clef anymore because it's been many months since you learned one of the clefs. You know, it's pretty common for you to learn one clef, the other, and then one of the clefs that just isn't quite as strong. You know, you just know one clef, treble clef or bass clef, way better than the other. So one thing I struggled with was reading bass clef notes just as good as treble clef notes. So I could make a lesson on that as well. Martha says proper wrist technique. I like that. I really like that a lot. So I could definitely make a lesson on that. That sounds terrific. And then Rich says, any news stories about your current students? Not recently. So wrist technique. I'm not going to teach it all to you today. Actually, I don't even have the camera on for the piano. But wrist technique is you really I'll just have to make a lesson on that because I don't think I could explain it really fast. Basically, you don't want your wrist bent any uncomfortable way. That's tip number one. I'll leave it with that. There is a whole thing because it's more than wrist technique. It has a lot to do with using your arm weight and making a lot of sound on the piano. So that could tie into it. That would make a really good lesson as well. All right, anybody else? If not, I'm going to wrap it up here, do like a little shorter one live stream today. That's kind of like why I like the Sundays, doing the community spotlight, as we call it, because it really helps me get a good idea. That's coming, Rich. It gives me a really good idea of what you're feeling as a community, but it also allows me to just kind of relax a little bit and take things in. Because on the Fridays, I like to do the teaching the lessons thing. So let's see. Would help to see how you do. Okay, Rich says, maybe a good shot at how you set at the piano, Tim. So if you go to the lessons on the web, .com/community, my favorite website in the whole world, and you go down where the calendar is and you look at today. Oh, that's what we're talking about now. What are you struggling with? Next time. Oh, I'm glad I brought this up. Next time, Friday, I'm still on the fence. Friday, for right now, we're going to say we're on break. And then Sunday, it's actually my mother's birthday, so I'm canceling for that just because I don't want to like rush and get everything set up. I'm sure you understand. And then on Friday, it's how to not give up on playing piano. So it's like a tip on dealing with frustration. And it's really for beginners, but people, even if you've been playing piano for a while, I think that would be really helpful. And look at Sunday, August 7th at 8 p.m. It says how to sit at the piano. So what I'm going to do for that lesson is I'm going to figure out a way. It shouldn't be too hard. Set up a camera to the side of me, and that will show me from the side rather than, front on, and then I'll show you like that. So that's coming. And then after that, let's see, the essential beginner's checklist to learning piano. So what is this? Well, that checklist is really just a list of basic things you need to know to begin learning piano. So it's really for people who may not have started learning piano yet, or maybe you learn piano and you just want to make sure you have these things learned so you get the best experience possible. And then another community spotlight, what are your goals? And then it's the 5 mistakes you don't want to make when learning how to play piano, and so on and so forth. So you can read the rest there. But yes, that is coming, Rich. That is a very good suggestion. Okay, any last comments or questions or suggestions? Rich says, my metronome goes to 280. Is that the highest? Probably. Pro tip, you will almost never have to play a 280. Ever. I don't think I've ever had to play a 280. Unless you're like a concert level pianist and you're playing something really, really out there. Oh, I would bump it up to, like, I would start, so I would learn a song at maybe 80, which is pretty slow. 60 if you want to go really slow, but 80. And then once you feel comfortable with that, bump it up to 90, then bump it up to 100. Good. That's a really good thing to use it to practice scales, your metronome. And then you probably want to work your way up to like 120, 140. That's actually considered pretty fast. This 140 is probably good for scales to work up to. You might have to do it at 80 in the beginning and then work it up that way. Okay, anybody else? Anybody else have any comments or questions? Great ones from Rich and great ones from, a few other people. Martha had a good one. IDP Lake Monroe had a few good ones. So, and new names, by the way. You know how I love new names in the chat. And just so everybody knows, we're off this week. So no live stream on Friday or Sunday this coming week. However, we're back to our normal schedule with our usual Fridays and Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to check in for another one of these. And on Fridays, I teach like a full-fledged lesson. And then I ask questions about it. And then Sundays are really reserved. Although I do have a couple lessons planned for those as well. Sundays are really reserved for us to have a chat as a community. I might call Rich on Skype, or I might call Robin on Skype, or somebody like that, and get them on. Oh, podcast. Podcast is becoming a real thing that is like 90% going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen yet. It could be a couple of months yet because I have to iron out the details. But I'll get that to you, Rich. But podcast. So what do I mean by podcast? Well, you probably know a podcast. You sit around and you talk about a topic, right? Well, I'm going to do this with other YouTubers that play piano. If so long as I can reach out to them and get them, I'm sure I can. With people from the live stream, like Rich here and Shesk. We need to get Shesk back. And, Robin. But I'll find other people to do the podcast with where, it's not just going to be my point of view. I'm going to be talking about a topic along with another student, another teacher. It may be even multiple people at once if it starts working out really well. But that's what we're going to do. I think that will replace Community Spotlight because we could do that on Sunday. This isn't for a while, so don't worry about this, but it is something coming up. And it's not something to worry about anyway. It's really a good thing. I think on Sundays what we'll do most of the time then is then we'd have like a podcast where we would just sit around and talk about learning music for like an hour. And that would give me a good opportunity to collaborate with other instructors and people in the community as well. So I think it will really help open up, the whole community and being together. That's one of my goals for this coming year is to make you, no matter who you are watching this, a bigger part of Lessons on the Web. Only if you want to. If you want to sit back in your chair and relax, totally cool with me. But I really want to have this become, more about us and get us to know each other better. Get us to help each other even more. I love when I get a comment sometimes. YouTube's very weird. Like, it'll tell me I have the comment, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll get back to that later. And then I can't find the comment anymore. And it was like a question, and then somebody else from the community will answer that question. And I love that. That's really awesome. I encourage that highly. That's some amazing stuff. Will you post the podcast on iTunes or just the website? Well, I will post it here on YouTube. Excuse me. The website. Man. And then I will also do iTunes. I'll put that podcast wherever I can. I need to come up with a name for it, so maybe we'll have a discussion on what the name should be, so you can have a little input in that, or at least give me some ideas. And, yeah. we'll see how this forms. Like I said, it's still in the very early stages, but it's something I've wanted to do for a while, and I'm like 95% sure I'm going to do it now. So I think it's safe to tell you about it. Lessons on the pod. Could be. Could be. Lessons on the pod. The only thing about that, is the title doesn't really say what it is, although my whole thing's called Lessons on the Web, and you could think, well, what kind of lessons? You know, it doesn't really say piano in there. I'll think of names. Okay, so you think of names, everybody think of names, and then let me know in the comments, and I would love to know. So, podcast is coming. I don't know when it's coming. Maybe in the fall. All right, everybody, I'm going to wrap it up here. I think it was as good as the suggestion's going to, or as far as the discussion's going to go. In terms of suggestions, I got a lot of great suggestions tonight, and I will definitely think about those as we work into new lessons in the future. The lessons will continue to get better. I mean, it's kind of subjective thing depending on what topics you want. But I will continue to make the lessons as engaging as I can. The last lesson I put out did pretty well in terms of engagement, in terms of like how many people, how much of the audience I retained throughout the lesson. And yeah, it's getting better and better. So I'll make the lessons as engaging as I can. Adding like that little quiz time at the end, I think kind of helps, because towards the end of anything, like you take a class, right, for an hour, are you really paying attention at the end of the class? Well, not really. And I think the same thing holds true for a YouTube video. So I like to put now like questions at the end of the video. And really not only are they just to engage you more, they are really to make sure you get everything out of the lesson that you need to get, so you don't move on and then you just miss something. So I think it's really helpful with that as well. So there's just some of the things rattling around in my brain. So everybody, have a great week. I will see you on, let's see what the next date is that we're meeting up. Like I said, Friday we're most likely not having one. I thought about maybe sliding one in there, but well, for right now, we'll say no. And then the next time we'll meet will be on Friday, August 5th, at the beginning of next month, where we will be talking about how to not give up on playing piano. Like I said, it's a guide on dealing with frustration and how to really set yourself up for success when you're playing the piano. You're welcome, Rich. You're welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming out to these live streams. It means so much to me. I mean, this whole thing, really. Thank you for being a part of something that really means a lot to me. It really is my life at this point. I mean, there are other things going on, obviously, but I really enjoy doing this for you. And, oh, my battery's running low. I really enjoy doing this for you, really, because I know it helps you out. Not everybody can have access to a regular piano teacher. Not everybody can access, lessons every single week. So I try to make this to give you an opportunity to chase your dream learning how to play piano. So thanks, everybody, as always, and good night.